I haven't spoken to my mother in 7 years, not because we had a screaming fight, not because she did something unforgivable, not because I cut her off dramatically. We just stopped talking, and that silence, it was louder than any argument could ever be. Most people think estrangement looks like slammed doors and angry voicemails. They think you remember exactly when it started, the moment everything broke. But for me, there was no moment. There was no breaking point. There was just a slow fade. Like a light dimming so gradually, you don't notice you're in the dark until you can't see anymore. And here's the thing nobody talks about. That kind of estrangement might actually be worse. Because you can't point to a specific betrayal. You can't say this is why. You just know that one day you realised you hadn't heard her voice in 3 months, then 6 months, then a year, and by the time you realised what had happened, it felt too late to fix it. Today, I'm going to tell you how 2 people who loved each other just didn't anymore, and how the silence between us said more than any words ever could. My mother was never mean to me. That's important to say up front because I know a lot of you watching have parents who were cruel, who hurt you deliberately, who made it easy to leave. My mother wasn't like that. She was just always busy. I don't mean that as a criticism. She worked hard. She was a nurse. 12-hour shifts, nights and weekends, the kind of job where people depend on you to literally keep them alive. She was good at what she did. I was proud of her. Still am. But that meant that our relationship lived in the spaces between her work schedule. A rushed breakfast before her shift. A text message during her break that she might respond to 8 hours later. Sunday dinners that got cancelled because the hospital was short-staffed. My school plays where she'd sit in the back row, exhausted, and leave early because she had to sleep before her night shift. I didn't resent her for it. Not then. I understood. I was a good daughter. I didn't complain. I didn't demand more. I adapted to her schedule instead of expecting her to adapt to mine. That was the foundation, I think. That's where it started, though I didn't know it at the time. When you learn early that your needs aren't urgent, you stop expressing them. When you learn that your mother's work matters more than your presence, you stop expecting her to show up. You stop asking. You stop reaching out as much. You stop waiting by the phone. And eventually, you stop altogether. It's not a fight. It's not even a choice, really. It's just what happens when 2 people run on different schedules long enough that they forget how to sync up. I left home at 19, college in a different state. For the first few months, we called every Sunday. That was the deal we made. Our anchor. Our consistency. But Sundays came and went. Sometimes I was busy with friends. Sometimes she was working. Sometimes I just felt tired. Emotionally tired and didn't want to have the kind of surface-level conversation where we both pretended everything was fine. We'd text instead. Short messages. How are you? Good. Busy. Miss you. You too. Words that sound like connection but don't actually connect anything. I got older. 22, 25. I had relationships, breakups, career changes, wins I wanted to celebrate, failures I wanted to process. And I'd think about calling her. I'd actually planned to call her. But then I'd realise how long it had been since we'd really talked. Really talked, not surface talk. And that realisation was paralysing. How do you explain to your mother that it's been 6 months and you don't even know where to start? How do you bridge a gap that big without acknowledging that a gap exists? So you don't bridge it, you just accept it. My mum would text. Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? And I'd respond with reassurance and vague plans to call. Plans I wouldn't keep. And she'd let it go. She wouldn't push. She wouldn't guilt me. She'd just accept my absence the way I'd accepted hers all those years ago. We were teaching each other, through our inaction, that we didn't need each other. That we were okay being distant. That some relationships just work better with space. The thing is, I was okay. I functioned fine. I didn't wake up thinking about my mother every day. She wasn't keeping me up at night. The absence didn't hurt acutely. It was just an absence. A fact. A background hum of disconnection that I'd gotten so used to, I barely noticed it anymore. That's the insidious part of this kind of estrangement. It doesn't feel like anything is wrong. It feels like nothing. I was 28 when I realised I didn't know my mother anymore. I was at a work event, making small talk with colleagues, and someone asked about my family, and I found that I had nothing to say. I didn't know if my mum was still at the same hospital. I didn't know if she'd taken that promotion she mentioned 3 years ago. I didn't know if she was dating anyone, if she had new hobbies, if she was happy. I literally could not have answered a basic question about her life. And instead of filling me with sadness, it filled me with something else. Relief. Because not knowing meant I wasn't responsible. Not knowing meant I didn't have to feel the weight of her existence. I could just not think about her. But that relief was followed by guilt. Shame. This quiet horror that I'd somehow become the kind of person who let her own mother become a stranger. That night, I lay in bed and thought about calling her. It was 11 p.m. Too late, I'd do it tomorrow. But I knew I wouldn't. I knew that the longer I waited, the harder it would get, and I knew that she was probably lying in bed somewhere, not thinking about me either. We'd both made peace with the silence, and that was somehow more final than any fight could ever be. If she'd said something hurtful, I could have forgiven her. If she'd betrayed me, I could have worked through it. If there'd been a moment where I could say, this is where it broke, and I could have tried to fix it. But there was nothing to fix. There was just a relationship that had slowly dissolved into nothing, and two people who'd decided that nothing was acceptable. I didn't call her that night, or the next night, or ever. Years passed. I moved to a new city, got a serious relationship, dealt with depression, therapy, personal growth, all things I never told my mother about, all things she wasn't part of, all things that happened in the space where she used to be. Here's what nobody tells you about estrangement. It's not the absence that's hard. It's all the moments where you become aware of the absence. Like Mother's Day. You'd think after 7 years it wouldn't matter, but it does. Every Mother's Day, I wake up and realise I haven't sent my mother anything. No card, no flowers, no phone call. And I don't know if she notices. I don't know if she cares. I don't know if she's told people her daughter doesn't call her on Mother's Day, or when something good happens. I got promoted last year. First person I wanted to tell? My mum. Not because I think she'd care, but because I wanted her to care. And I couldn't call her. Not after 7 years of silence. It felt too late. The moment had passed. Or when I hear about other people's mothers. My partner talks about calling his mum. My friends post photos with their parents, and I have to just sit with that. Sit with the fact that I've chosen, or allowed, a life where that is unto part of my story. The silence isn't quiet. It's everywhere. It's in every gap where her voice used to be. It's in the parts of my life that she doesn't know about. It's in the person I've become that she's never met. And the worst part, I don't even know how to break it now. How do I call after 7 years? What do I say? Hey, Mum. Sorry I haven't talked to you since you were in your 50s. How's that going? The apology would be bigger than our entire recent relationship, so I don't call. And I imagine she doesn't either. And we're both just okay with that, living our separate lives. Sometimes I see things on social media, through mutual friends, through relatives I do talk to, that remind me she exists. But it's more like remembering a character from a book I read once, someone who mattered once but doesn't anymore. Is that sad? Yes. Is it traumatic? Not really. Is it something I could fix? Absolutely. But I don't. Because some estrangement isn't about anger. It's about inertia. It's about the weight of time and the cost of reopening something that's calcified into acceptance. It's easier to leave it closed. About 3 years into the silence, so 4 years ago now, I was in therapy. And my therapist asked me something that I've never stopped thinking about. She said, "Do you think your mother is waiting for you to call?" And I broke down. Because yes, I think she is. Not actively, like she's sitting by the phone. But somewhere in her. I think she's waiting. I think she's thought about calling me. I think she's calculated the time and thought, too much time has passed. I think she's done the same math I've done, the same calculus that says the gap is too big now. We're both waiting for the other to close a gap that we both created, and while we wait, the silence grows. The thing is, I used to blame her. Before the estrangement, I mean. I blamed her for being too busy, for not showing up, for letting work be more important than me. And maybe some of that was fair. But somewhere along the way, I became the one who wasn't showing up. I became the one who chose other things. And now I'm waiting for her to fix what we both broke. That's the lesson in the silence, I think. Estrangement isn't always one person's fault. Sometimes it's what happens when two people who both learn to be distant keep being distant until it becomes the only language they speak. My mum taught me, not intentionally, that love from a distance was okay. That you could care about someone and not show it. That presence wasn't required for a relationship to exist. And I learned it so well that I taught it back to her. Now we're both fluent in the language of absence, and I don't know how to unlearn it. I'm not going to tell you that I called her and we reconciled. I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of a resolved ending, because that's not what this is. Some people will hear this and think I'm wrong, that I should call, that 7 years is too long and I need to be the bigger person and make the first move. And maybe they're right. Maybe I should. Maybe the version of me that's brave enough would. But I'm not sure I am. And I'm not sure if calling would fix anything or just open up a wound that's already scarred over so completely we've both forgotten it's there. Other people will hear this and feel relief. Relief that estrangement doesn't always look dramatic. That you don't have to have a reason. That sometimes people just grow apart and that's allowed. That you don't have to fight to leave. You can just leave. Quietly. And let the silence do the work. I'm somewhere in between those two camps. I'm aware that I could change this. I'm also aware that I'm choosing not to. And I'm trying to live with both of those things at once. What I've learned, what the silence has taught me, is that family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about presence, showing up, staying even when it's hard, being there in the actual moments of each other's lives, not just the big ones. My mother wasn't bad at this. She was doing her best, but her best came with distance built in, and I loved her enough to not make it harder on her, so I matched her distance, and somewhere in that matching, we lost each other. And the worst part, I don't blame her. I don't think she's a bad person. I think we're both just people who never learned how to need each other in the right way. We learned how to be independent so well that we became unavailable. If I could go back, would I do it differently? I don't know. Maybe I'd call on Sundays. Maybe I'd push harder for connection. Maybe I'd tell her when I was struggling instead of pretending I was fine. Maybe I'd let her know that I needed her, even though she was working, even though it was hard. But I didn't. And now I'm living in the world I created. The one where my mother is someone I used to know. The one where love looks like silence. The one where the most honest thing between us is everything we're not saying. And that's the thing about this kind of estrangement. There's no villain. There's no wrong person. There's just two people who gradually became strangers to each other, and neither of us knows how to change that without admitting how far apart we've drifted. So the silence continues. And it says everything. Thank you for letting me sit with this, for not rushing me to fix it or judge me for letting it happen, for understanding that family estrangement isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quietest thing in the world. If this resonated with you, if you have someone you've slowly stopped talking to, if you know what it's like to let a relationship fade rather than end, I'd love to hear about it in the comments, not to fix it, just to know you're not alone in the quiet. And if you haven't talked to someone you love in a while, maybe this is the sign to text them. Not because I did, but because you still can. And sometimes that matters more than anything. I'll be back next week with another story about the silence between people. Stories that don't have neat endings. Stories about what it means to just live with the mess. Thanks for watching. Really.